Fit for life.
I eat carrots, I eat cabbage, I eat sprouts, I eat radish, don't eat sugar, don't eat fat. What about salt? Don't eat that. Look after myself. I'm mad about health, mad about health, mad about myself. I go for a jog, I go for a swim, I go for a run, I go to the gym, I got the gear, I got the kit, got the strip, it's a perfect fit. Look after myself. I'm mad about health, mad about health, mad about myself. Feel my pulse rate, feel my biceps, feel my kneecap, feel my biceps. I'm really fit. But you know what? My right knee hurts a lot. Right knee swollen, ankle sprained, wrist is twisted, shoulder strained. But I'm really fit. I'm much stronger. Never mind the pain, I'm gonna live longer. Something funny that I've been told. Why work so hard just to get old? Don't get that, don't get it at all. Can't stop now, gotta do some more. Look after myself, mad about health, mad about health, mad about myself. No time left to hang about, no time left for going out, no time left to see the wife. I don't care, I'm fit for life, that's what I am, fit for life. Pity about the knee, I'm fit for life. Pity about the ankles, I'm fit for life. Pity about the wife, I'm fit for life.
Fossils and my fossil. My brother works at the Natural History Museum in London. He's a fossil. No. Sorry, I got that wrong. He looks after my brother. Looks after the fossils? What sort of job is that? I mean, it can't be very hard, can it? I mean, they're just like stones. They don't jump at you like if you're looking after a tiger. Yeah, imagine that. You come down in the morning, there's a tiger, you go up to it and you say, what do you want to eat? And the tiger goes, you! Well, that would be hard, wouldn't it? No, my brother looks after fossils. I went to his room 40 years ago and there were 4 fossils sitting on a shelf. And I said, what are you doing, Brian? And he said, looking after the fossils. Well, they're not going to jump off the wall, are they? I said.
He said, oh, well, you never know. Yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Well, I went to his office the other day. The 4 fossils were still there on the shelf. I said, Brian, the fossils are still there. And he said,
yeah, that's right. That's because I was here.
So now listen, if ever you find a fossil and you don't know what it's called, you can pick it up, say, and you shout at it, Dave! Melanie! And it doesn't answer. You know what you can do? You can take it to the Natural History Museum in London and you go up to one of the people in uniform and tell them you've got a fossil and you don't know its name. Dave! Melanie! You see? It doesn't answer. And you know what they do? They send for my brother, Dr. Brian Rosen. And he lives in a cave underneath the museum. He wears a kind of leopard skin bikini and he's got a great big club. Hoo, hoo, yeah? And he comes up from down below the museum and you'll hear him coming. Hoo, hoo, hoo. And suddenly, the big double doors open. And there in front of you, there he is in his leopard skin bikini. And you can go up to him and say, hello, yeah, I've found a fossil and I don't know its name. See, Dave, Melanie. Look, see, it doesn't answer. And my brother takes a magnifying glass out of his leopard skin bikini bottom, and it's one of those little ones, you know, and he puts it in his eye, and it makes his eye go all really big. And then he says he studies it really hard, and he says,
No, that's not Dave. No, that's not Melanie. That is an ammonite, or maybe you'll say, that is a belemnite.
And you'll be very pleased. And you know, if it's a really, really good one, do you know what he does then? He nicks it off you. Yeah, he does. Because if it's really, really good, it doesn't belong to you. No, it doesn't belong to him. Do you know who it belongs to? The Queen. And do you know, if you go to Buckingham Palace, you'll see that it's stuffed full of old fossils. Clever cakes and other stories. I'm not afraid of the dark, said Desmond to himself. I'm not afraid of the dark. Anyway, I ought to be used to it by now. He was Farmer Fiddler's boy on the farm up the valley, and quite often he was kept working late. This night it was lambing, standing with the sheep, trying to make sure that every lamb that was in a mother ewe came out alive. He'd gone on working till he was stiff with cold and nearly asleep on his feet. One moment he thought he saw a lamb with a dog's head, And the next he was sure he felt something strange in his hand, opened his fingers, and there looking at him was what he thought was a big sheep's eye. Now, it was time for the walk home in the dark. No harm could come to him on the road, surely. There was the old beech tree. That meant he was halfway home. What if it had been a sheep's eye, he thought. What would have I done then? He shivered. What's that noise? There was a hard, brisk rustling in a tree. It was above his head. He looked up. No, it was nothing. Just the line of the branches, cutting up the sky. He walked on. The cold was biting his face. He was coming to the bit of the road he called
the tunnel.
Prickly hawthorn trees had grown over the road, and any light from the moon or the stars was kept out by the branches. It was just like a tunnel. Desmond listened to the sound of his feet slow down as he stepped into it. Well into the middle, he felt something on his neck. He rushed his hand up to it. What's that? As he spoke, there was a rustle in the ditch beside him, and he stopped dead still in the middle of the road. Oh, the thing on his neck was just a wet leaf, so that was that. But what was that rustle? He looked into the deep dark of the ditch. There was more rustling, and then a whimper. It sounded like a dog in pain. Desmond couldn't see, but he called out to it. Here, boy! Here, boy! And the thing whimpered again. So he took a step nearer. He saw a flash of teeth, and it rustled again. Was it a dog? Or something bigger? It seemed to be caught, helpless. So he stepped up to it. Yes, it was a dog. Thank goodness for that. And it looked like it had broken its leg, poor thing, and had got weak and cold, trying to get home. Mind you.
Whose dog was it?
Desmond reckoned to know every dog round these parts, and this poor little red and white fellow wasn't one he recognised. Now, lie there a bit more, boy, he said to it, and I'll fetch you some dock leaves from by the stream. He had it in mind to tie the leaves round the bad leg and see if he could walk the dog home with him. There might be a few pence
reward in it for him from the person who had lost it.
The stream was just a few steps away, and Desmond was soon down to the water and back with the sopping leaves. When he got back, the sight that hit him shook him through and through. The dog had grown huge in the ditch. It was now as big as a bull, and its great red and white side heaved up and down. The whimpering was now more like a... The wet leaves froze in his hands, and his eyes seemed to freeze with them. Then he knew he was trapped. He had been tricked by...
a devil dog.
Oh, yes, he had heard about devil dogs from Farmer Fiddler.
Devil dogs? Farmer Fiddler had said they beg you to help them with their lame leg or their raggedy ear.
You turn round and they've changed into a poison fish or blood eagles, and you're a goner, finished, dead as old nails. Desmond clenched his teeth together.
I ain't gonna be beaten by no devil dog,
he said to himself, and he stepped towards the giant beast. Farmer Fiddler had always said that if you ever meet a devil dog, never say a word. Desmond would do just as Farmer Fiddler said, but he reckoned he could do something else. He had beat this old devil dog with kindness. With his hand shaking and his teeth held tight together, he tied the freezing leaves round the devil dog's leg, and not once did he say a thing. When the leg was all tied up. Out of the ditch climbed the creature. It towered over Desmond, and he could feel its warm breath on his face. It gave a husky right at him. If I'm finished, now's the time, Desmond thought. At least no one can say I didn't try and help a poor dumb thing in pain. Then what do you know? The beast turned round and trotted off down the road away from Desmond. Well, what do you know, he said to himself. What do you know? And didn't
I see it wag its tail just then? But no one will believe me when I tell that story later. But no matter, it's time I got home.
He took a good, strong step towards home. He hurried through the rest of the tunnel and was soon heading down the part of the road he called the Snake. It curved first one way and then the other. Not long to go now, he thought, and he hurried on round the next bend. But as he turned the corner, he came to a sudden standstill and jammed his leg stiff. In the middle of the road stood a huge, dark-coated goat with bright green eyes and terrible hoofs and horns. Desmond stared at it.
Something in the back of his mind talked to him. Hadn't he heard once of a boy who was stopped on the road by a giant sheep, and had turned and run screaming, and hadn't this giant sheep galloped right over him, crushing him with its giant hoofs? And didn't the people who told him the story say that the boy's terrible mistake was to turn and run? If he had stood and faced up to the creature, he'd have been all right. So Desmond did just that. He stood and faced up to the horrible goat. But a moment later, it seemed like this was a frightful mistake, for the great goat took one look at Desmond and started to charge towards him, with its head down, stamping the ground and roaring, looming nearer and nearer, its great gleaming horns. Now is the end, said Desmond. Now is the end, but don't turn, Desmond boy, don't turn round. And just then, from out of the hedge by the side of the road, leapt a huge red and white dog, with a few old leaves tied round its leg. It was the devil dog. It took a great pounce towards the goat and landed on its back. Now the two beasts fought. Sparks flew up from the goat's hoofs on the road, and the dog's teeth flashed. The only light on the whole scene came from the two animals' eyes. They roared and howled. The goat lunging at the dog with its horns, and the dog trying to sink its teeth into the goat's neck.
Desmond knew what to do and what not to do. He took neither one step forwards nor one step backwards, but watched the whole fight with his legs still locked stiff. He could hear every breath and every grunt. It was terrifying, but even when it seemed as if the fight would roll right over him, he didn't move. In the end, the goat was getting the worst of it, and it stepped away from the dog. But before Desmond could flicker an eyelid, there was no goat there. In its place flew
an owl. It swooped over the dog, flapped silently past Desmond, and away over the hedges and fields. The devil dog stood, panting, its great long tongue lolling out of its mouth like a huge lump of liver. It looked at Desmond, and a frightening growl came out of its throat.
Well, it's been a long time coming, thought Desmond, and now this is it. But deep inside that head of his, Farmer Fiddler's voice told him, say nothing. Not a word, not a thank you, not a sorry, not a good evening, not a goodbye. Nothing. He knew that if he did, that huge cave of a mouth would open wide and snap him up as if he were nothing more than a little bird. But the great devil dog stood in his way, and Desmond had to get home. He couldn't stay here all night. If these beasts didn't get him first, he'd freeze to death. So, without so much as an excuse me or a please, Desmond walked first towards and then past the devil dog. It stayed just where it was until Desmond had left it behind him. How he would have loved to have looked behind him, though. How he would have loved to glance over his shoulder to make sure he was safe, or to have one last glimpse of the great beast. But he knew not to. No one looks back at a devil dog and lives to see a new day. On he walked, on, and believe it or not, he did